So in this section, we turn a little bit away from the measures of central tendency, the mean, the median, the mode that we talked about in section 5.1, and we look at a different way of analyzing data. It's going to be a bit of a process to get to the end point, but we'll walk through it step by step to get there. What we have in this table is the maximum flow rate for the Red River in Winnipeg every year. So as you can see, in 1950, it flowed at a peak of 3,058 meters cubed per second. Dropped down a bit to 1953, it only flowed at a maximum of 357, and so on and so on. So the question that we have to answer is determine the water flow rate that is associated with serious flooding. To do that, we could just look back in the news and see when there was serious flooding, but we want to take a mathematical approach to this. So to do this, we need to create three things. The first thing being a frequency distribution or a frequency table. What it is you can see on the right here, it's a set of intervals, usually a table of equal width into which raw data is organized. And this table on the left here is raw. But what we need to do is to make it a little bit simpler, break it down a little bit so it's not so huge to look at. So a frequency distribution must have somewhere between 5 to 12 categories. And those category sizes will depend on what kind of data we're dealing with. We're dealing with water flow rate. We can look at this. Ideally, we get to 10 categories. So the way I like to do this, I like to scan through the list and see what my largest number is. And that's why I've highlighted some of these here. My largest flow is 4,587. So if I'm going to categorize this and group this 10 ways, if I group from 0 to 1,000 and then 1,000 to 2,000 and so on, that 10 categories would get me to 10,000, which is a little too much. But if I group by 500s, 10 categories will get me to 5,000, which is just past my maximum, and 500 is a good number to divide into. So that's what I'm going to do. So when I make my table, I need two columns. The first one will be the data that we're looking at. So we'll look at flow rate in the first column. And the second column is always the frequency. And the frequency is just how many times that flow rate shows up in that category. So saying that we're going to divide this into 500, it might seem that you should go with a flow rate of 0 to 500 and then 500 to 1,000, but that creates a complication. Where would you put a flow rate of 500? Would you put it in the first category or the second category? And that becomes unclear, so we don't do it that way. We will still use 500 as our width, but our first category will not end at 500. It will end at 499. Then our next category will start at 500, and instead of going all the way to 1,000, it will go to 999. So just one less than our starting point, just so we don't have any overlap, just so we don't have any confusion there. Next category, 1,000 to 1,499, and so on, and so on. I'm just going to fill in the categories here. And I went on autopilot there. I was going to put 4,000 in that one. Now, if you don't have all these categories written down yet, please pause the video now, get them all down, and then come back when you do, because the next part will be counting through this list. So to figure out the frequency, it's just a simple matter of looking through the list and seeing how many years, in this case, actually fit inside that category. So for 0 to 499, we'll just count them up. And what I like to do is I like to cross them out as I go to make sure that I don't double count anything. And that way, if I miss something later on, I can just go and add it in. So looking here, I have 357, 481, that's 2. Keep going. 187 would be 3. 159, 4, 5, 6, and that seems to be it. I'll put a 6 in there because 6 years have that flow rate. And just keep repeating this process until you fill it all up. I'm just going to go through quickly here. I get 11 between 500 and 999. I get 9 in the next one. Hopefully my counting is right. $14 here. Then 5. 1. 3. Zeros in the next ones. And last 1 in the last category. Now, if you want to double check to make sure that you actually got the correct number of items, take your frequencies and add them up. So 6, 11, 9, and so on. Should add all those up. When you do that, adds all up to 50 in the frequency column, and from 1950 to 1999 would be 50 years. So we did match up. We did get everything counted. This is the frequency distribution done. This will get used to make the next two things. A histogram is just the proper mathematical name for a bar graph. Frequency polygon, we'll get to that in a minute. But for the bar graph, we will have flow rate, or whatever the data we had was, along the x-axis, and frequency will be on the y-axis. We need to set a scale. Looking at this graph, we have on the y-axis, we have 20, and our biggest frequency is 14. So if we go 1 for 1 on the graph scale, we'll get up to 14 nicely. Flow rate, we always look at the beginning of the category for where we're going to mark points. We need to get up to 5,000, so 4,500. So if I go that every 2 is 500, which matches our categories nicely, that's what we need to do. We get 1,000 here, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, 3,500, 4,000, 4,500, 5,000. And I'm not labeling those points just because I am low on space, and in a situation like this, you might be as well. But if you can label 3 points, that's ideal. To make the bar graph on paper, a ruler is the best way to do this. So if you have one, please pause the video, go get one, and then come back. I do not have a ruler, and I have no way of making it that way with my iPad here, so I'm just going to do the best I can for straight lines. To get the bars, we simply look at the categories. So between 0 to 499, we have a frequency of 6. So in that first I know it shows between 0 to 500, but that's the beginning of the next block. We'll make that bar 6 high, connect it. That's our first entry in the frequency table as the histogram. Next category, 500 to 999, we had 11. So we can just share the one side of that bar. We already drew. There's 11. Next one we had 9. Then 14. And again, please use a ruler on this. I'm doing the best I can to draw straight lines, but not totally successful. Then we had a 5. A little short one there. A 1. Then a 3. And we get a little bit of a complication at the end here with these two categories that have 0. We don't just leave those out. We do, in fact, need to put bars that are 0 tall here. That would just be a flat line on those categories. And our last category had a 1, so we'll get a short bar there. That is the histogram completed. As for the frequency polygon, the graph of a frequency polygon is produced by joining the midpoints, the middles, of the intervals, the bars, using straight lines. So we will take and join essentially into triangles the midpoints of each interval on the histogram. It's literally drawn on top of the histogram. So I will take, I'm doing it in red so you can see the difference, the midpoint of the first one, join it to the midpoint of the second one. It really helps a lot with this. Do the same thing going to the next one and the next one, and so on and so on, all the way. And try that one again until you get to the end. Now, what happens when you have two bars back to back that are the same height? Well, I'll connect this one down to my 0. That one's easy. You still need to connect the midpoint of this one to the midpoint of the next one, which would be a straight line across, and then connect it to the last one. We don't ever close off the ends of the frequency polygon, so it will be open on both the left side and the right side. That is what the finished frequency polygon would look like.